It's time for the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast. Powerful and liberating business strategies you can start in 5 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, Dean Soto.
Hey, this is Dean Soto, founder of Freedom in 5 Minutes and freedomin5minutes.com. And we're here again with another Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast episode. Today's topic is this: building wealth with short-term investment properties. That and more coming up. Oh, cool. So this is going to be a really cool episode because this is something that I've been extremely interested in because I have several properties, but they're all long-term leases. And it's interesting because while it might be nice to get those long-term leases, they're with the revolution of short-term investment property, there's so many more avenues to make more off of the assets that you acquire in the real estate space. And I'm excited about this because I have Brandon Telesmanic, who is an expert in this. He is an expert in actually setting up people with short-term property investments. And I wanted to get him on here. He has just a great amount of experience with this particular subject, and he is the owner of BLT Enterprises. And I just thought it would be great to have him on right now. So all that being said, Brandon, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing well.
Cool. So
thanks for having me on here.
Oh, no problem. No problem. It's my pleasure for sure, because this is a topic that I think is going to be extremely valuable to a lot of people. So first and foremost, give a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into this particular industry that you're in right now with the short-term rentals.
Yeah. So I am 34 years old right now. I graduated from physical therapy school when I was about 25, I think, and I was living down in Southern California and was living actually right on the beach in Newport.
Oh, nice.
Fantastic. And
that's not a bad gig there.
Yeah, not a bad gig at all. And I graduated and I was working a few different jobs and hustling and making pretty good money. But after living there for a few years, it became very clear to me that I was not going to be able to ever afford one of these homes that I was renting on the beach with my current finances and, what I was projected to make in the future. And so, at that time, there was a few different life changes with me. And I made the decision to move back to the Central Valley, where I'm originally from Fresno. And I was motivated because, one, I wanted to own a house and I wanted to start investing my money rather than, putting it into rent. My family owns a business in the Central Valley, a therapy business that I wanted to be part of. And everything just kind of worked itself out. I had to leave behind a lot of friends there, and that was definitely the hardest part. But came back to Fresno, was able to buy a single family home at a very good time because it was just at the end of when the market was crashing around 2011, and started working with family business. Things were going pretty well. Was able to rent out the extra rooms in my house to pay off my mortgage.
Nice.
And did that for a few years, and I was pretty happy with that. But as I started getting a little bit older, roommates moved out. I had a very serious girlfriend who's now my wife, and I was not spending really much time at the house at all. Maybe 10% of the time I was at the house. Yeah. So either hanging out with other people or with my wife. And I just felt like, man, paying this mortgage for this house and I'm underutilizing it. This thing needs to be making money. I need to move out of here. I can rent this thing out for $1,700 a month potentially, and be making money off of it. And at that time, there was a lot of news about Airbnbs. People are talking about them, mainly in bigger cities, definitely not in Fresno. And so I did some research and talked to a few different people that I know, mainly in the Bay Area. And, most of the people said, who the hell is going to come to Fresno? That doesn't really make much sense. Mm-hmm. You should just maybe get an apartment and rent out the house and make a little bit of money that way. Anyways, I decided that I was going to put it as a short-term rental regardless of what everyone else was saying. And I cleaned the house up really nice, got some furniture, and the goal originally was just to make, $500-$600 because I was still going to be part-time living in the house and then renting it out. And so that would help me, offset my mortgage payments. And so I got it all set up and was seemingly pretty proud of what I had put on the market, took some good pictures, what I thought were good pictures. And lo and behold, the place started getting booked up. And wow. And it wasn't just, one or two bookings. This was approximately 6 years ago. And so it started getting booked up, and it was just very evident that there was a demand for this. Because regardless of what people in Fresno thought about it, it wasn't people in Fresno that were renting the home. It was people coming from LA or San Francisco or, out of the state or sometimes even out of the country that were renting the home. And so because, there was so much demand, I was able to put more money into the house, make it nicer, respond to, people's feedback. And that's the basis of the business. And so from there, I was able to just continue to reinvest the money that I was making from the short-term rental, that one short-term rental, and continue to buy them, remodel the homes, and then continue to rent them out. And in that time, I got married, and my wife was able to bring in a good income. She brought many valuable things to the table, lots of organization, and just continued to scale up. And so now I'm at the point where I have 5 short-term rentals and have a team that's helping me out, and it's going pretty well.
Wow. I love that, man. It's cool because as you were actually saying, that the people here were in because I get to be a part of this Central Valley crew now that I'm in Prather, California, right next door to Fresno. When people were saying like there's nothing here in Fresno, why would anybody ever come here? One of the first times I ever personally used Airbnb was when we were traveling from Southern California to Idaho, and we stopped in this literally like no name town. Like nobody, it was a small town. Population was probably like 1,000, but it was halfway to where we wanted to go, and it was perfect because we drove halfway to our final destination and stayed there. We actually stayed at that place for 2 nights, I think, and then because we wanted to go see Reno and a couple other places. It was outside of Reno, and had you listened to them, you wouldn't have got those people who are traveling from Oregon down to Southern California or whatever, Yeah,
that is a big misconception that no one comes to Fresno or that people only utilize short-term rentals when they're going on vacation. So, when people ask the question, well, who's coming to Fresno? You think, Fresno has a lot of hotels, they're not the nicest hotels, but they're getting booked and they're doing business. So if a town has a hotel, then most likely, a short-term rental will work on some level. People are coming to Fresno oftentimes to visit family, for weddings, for birthdays, for any event that could take place anywhere. And large groups like to get together and stay together, and it makes it more fun. And so, the short-term rental is far more desirable than, even renting a hotel out. And it's not like we really have suites or anything like that you could rent out in Fresno. So it becomes a very, very good alternative. And then in addition to that, with the Central Valley, there's a fair amount of development going on, and you have workers that are regularly coming to the valley and, need places to stay. And so those are your, Monday through Friday guests.
Yeah.
Where if you go have a short-term rental in say Lake Tahoe, you're going to get guests that are every weekend's going to be booked, and you can probably put the rate insanely high on the weekends.
Yep.
But who's going to be staying there Monday through Thursday? Probably it's going to be a lot harder to fill, especially in the off season.
Yep.
So
that's
where, places like Fresno or Visalia or Merced, you could make pretty good business out of it.
Yeah, this is great, man. This is that's all stuff that is. So traditionally, when you think of any type of rental, at least for me, it's the typical where it's a lease. You have somebody in there, you get a turnkey property, and you get cash flow from it. All of those factors that you're talking about right there are things that with, your typical long-term lease, 1 or 2 year lease, you're not going to have that as those as an issue or a factor. Which brings me to the question, like what are like comparing it to your typical long-term, you're renting out your house to somebody for a year or two. What are the big differences, and what are the pros and cons of each one, and why do you think and do you think short-term rentals beat out long-term rentals in the long run? No pun intended.
Yeah. So to answer the question of do they beat them out, it really depends on what your specific goals are. If your goals are to maximize your profits, then no question, you can make a lot more money as a short-term rental. But it's also the difference between a passive and an active investment. And so a long-term rental is going to be more passive. There's some work up front in finding the tenant, preparing the home each time you have a turnover. And, then you just kind of sit back and probably either manage it yourself or have a management team. But really it shouldn't be too labor intensive. There's lots of, potential issues with tenants that don't pay rent, and then they have their renters' rights, and, evicting tenants and things like that can be a major, major headache. So that's, I don't have any of the homes as long-term rentals. My dad has, so I've been around it, my whole life. But with the short-term rental, you set up even if it's longer than 30 days, usually you do the rentals in increments of 30 days. So, and the reason for that is so that the renter or, your tenant, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have any rental rights. So you're not going to get a squatter in your property. They're throwing a loud party or they, damage your property, you can kick them out. And that's within your rights as the owner of the home if they're not abiding by your rules.
Oh, I didn't know that. So for those who are listening, basically what you're saying is if you were to allow like a duration longer than 30 days and not like chunk it out, they would be able to, you run the risk of them having certain rights as renters, as opposed to if you say let them only do 30 days at a time. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I've never had to go down that path, but that's pretty much the gist of it.
Wow. That's great. That's interesting.
So with the short-term rentals, you always have to remember that you're really in the customer service business. And a long-term renter, you're a landlord, but a short-term rental, you're more like, more like should be, in my opinion, like a luxury hotel, where you have clients that are coming, and your goal is to make those clients happy with their accommodations. And so, that means different things for each person, but you have to put a lot of time and money and effort into setting up the property appropriately, and then regularly maintaining it, cleaning it, having a crew, really, because it's pretty hard to maintain by yourself if you're doing multiple homes. That's going to help you maintain these homes and run them efficiently, so that you have happy customers that are going to leave positive reviews. And so where as a long-term rental, you're not getting any reviews on your property. There's no site that I know of that's going to review, if you have a single family home and you're renting it out, they're not going to review the landlord. Maybe on larger apartment complexes, there definitely is. But with a short-term rental business, you have to constantly make adjustments and do everything you can to keep your customers happy, so that you keep your reviews up, because that's how you're going to generate more business, is people seeing those reviews and knowing that it's a quality place to stay at.
That's interesting. That's
so there's a lot more time and effort. You really have to be available 24/7 to deal with any potential issues that come up. So it's a very, very active investment.
Well, it seems like you get because it's more active. It really is the difference between like a cash flow and investment from sit back and let the cash come in type thing, and actually creating a business, a hospitality business. Where
absolutely, it's you're creating a hospitality business,
and that's why, and hence why you're actually able to make more in profit if you actually treat it like a business. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'll say that there are people that do the minimum and provide the most basic accommodations, and there's different ways to do it. I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong, but those people are still making money, and many of them are making very good money because they're capitalizing on the opportunity out there. It's been my approach to do it the best I can and provide the best product I can, because I believe if I do that, then I'm going to net the most amount of returns, profit. And I feel like that's what's happened, but there's other ways to do it as well.
But yeah, because I think if with that type of mindset, it's as it becomes more and more and more popular, people expect a lot more. Because I remember my first time with Airbnb, I was just happy to get the house. But then I started seeing, I started seeing different places I stayed at. They would have the Keurigs all set up for you. They have waters. They have
coffee stations.
All of that, and you start actually expecting more and expecting more and expecting more. The last place I stayed in Chula Vista for I was doing a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournament. It was a duplex, and we paid $250 a night for this duplex because there was a lot of people staying for this tournament there. And we walk in, there was no waters in the fridge. It was super small and cramped. There was no snacks or whatever. And I'm like, hey, this sucks. I was like, I just paid $250 and I'm so used to getting all of what you would typically get at a hotel,
Yeah. The level of homes and the quality on all the short-term rental websites has gone up pretty dramatically over the past 3 years, I would say. And, Airbnb has different levels now where there's Airbnb Plus, Airbnb Lux, I think it's called, or Luxury, which is the highest level.
Yeah.
And, these homes are under a strict, criteria of guidelines that they have to adhere to achieve that status. Before it was the host, the highest level would be that you would be like a super host on Airbnb or I forget what they call it on VRBO, but that was just more generated by your reviews and less so, the criteria of your home. But now there's all these other ways to differentiate these homes, and people have a high expectation. They expect a very high level of cleanliness. And I think you have a lot of people that probably wouldn't have been open to the idea of a short-term rental 3-4 years ago that are coming over and, really want luxury accommodations.
Yeah.
And that's good. I mean, that means more business. Those are probably the most difficult people to have as guests, but you gotta do your best to accommodate everyone and do your best to, have a high level across the board, whether you're having, some guys that are coming to, work and do a plumbing job for 5 days, or a family of 4 that's coming for a swim tournament.
Yeah. Man, I love this. So how do what are some of the steps to even get started in doing any of this type of short-term rental stuff? What would you say? So if someone who had the capital to actually invest in something like this, where would they start? What are some of the kind of the I should say the, I don't know, roadblocks or just like.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. So the first thing is, you've got to make the commitment for the time, and not only have the capital to be able to put a down payment on an investment property, but probably put a significant amount of money into remodeling that property. And maybe you could buy a property that already has undergone some remodeling or just looks nice to begin with. And then you've got to furnish it and, buy all the things that you need to run the Airbnb, all the linens and cleaning supplies and, all of that stuff. And so the biggest thing is finding the correct property. And right now the market is pretty high. And it would be hard to find a property right now that would make sense under my criteria for something I would buy. And the Fresno market, I would say, is fairly saturated. But if you look, and I'm talking, just about the Central Valley here, you can apply this to, anywhere, wherever you're at. But, looking more in some of these other cities around Fresno, Visalia, Merced, Bakersfield, that don't have a huge number of short-term rentals, but, there is most likely a need there. That would be the market that I would be looking at. And so to share a little bit about how I purchased the homes, the criteria that I was using was that the purchase price of the home had to make sense. Basically, if I looked at it in 3 different ways, it needed to make sense, obviously, as a short-term rental, that I was going to be able to make, a very good profit on it. It needed to make sense as a long-term rental where I would at least make, $200 a month. And then thirdly, it needed to make sense as a flip. So if I wanted to completely get out of it altogether, I could turn around and sell the house and make a profit off of
That's
it.
smart. Yeah.
And so, it's hard right now to hit those last two criteria.
Yeah.
The first one, you can make money as a short-term rental, but if they change the laws in Fresno County, then, well, I don't want to be stuck with this overpriced home and all this furniture that, I've got to sell on Craigslist or something.
Yeah.
So those are the three criteria, and that's the market's at a place right now where it's tough, but there are unique properties and different ways to think about it and different types of properties that you can bring on the market. But you've also got to think about your proximity to the property and how time intensive it is and how frequently you're going to need to be going there and managing it, whether it's, doing it yourself or meeting with people that are going to, do the work for you. So, those are the big things to consider. Yeah.
Man, I love that though, especially the three criteria because I've been in situations where I've had to offload real estate, and if I didn't have that criteria, and which I didn't at the time, I just got lucky, by the way.
Yeah, that's usually how it happens when you start.
Yeah.
Put yourself in the right position.
Yeah, and man, but yeah, like not being able to flip it and not offload it or be able to get the minimum of cash flow from a long-term lease. Those are actually really, because I know for me, I probably would have just looked at the profit from long-term lease and from short-term, but yeah, I didn't even consider, things can happen, laws can change, things can happen where they won't let you do a short-term thing. Because I have a friend in Hawaii where they have to get like permits and stuff like that for it, and they don't always hand them out.
Yeah. The laws. I mean, we really have no control over. When they change the laws are different from county to county and from city to city, and they could change them at any time. I mean, I keep up to date with what's coming down the pipeline, and Fresno, I would say, is better. Fresno County is more insulated than lots of these other big cities like Santa Monica or San Francisco, for example, where there's just such a huge rental shortage that they don't want short-term rentals because those are eating up places that people could live in long-term.
Yeah.
So Fresno doesn't really have that problem.
But it's cool because, I mean, it kind of it goes toward it. This actually kind of goes toward the 5-minute mindset shift, the 5-minute strategic mindset shift question that I always ask people, and now is the time to actually start doing if to at least trying to do the short-term rental, because ride the wave when you can. And one of the things that, because you actually filled out my questionnaire, so I knew what this was going to be. You mentioned that your 5-minute mindset shift is actually doing things as quickly as possible. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, making my 5-minute mindset shift is more so than doing things as quickly as possible. It's more to believe in the product that you're putting out there, and as opposed to trying to put as little money in something as possible and try to get as much out of it and little effort, trying to see if it works. Well, that works to a certain degree, but at a certain point, you have to believe in your idea and invest the capital and time be proud of what you put out there.
I see what you're saying. So
that's how you're going to have long-term success and be able to, really have pride in the product that that you're putting out there.
I see what you're saying. Okay, now I get the language that you use. It's basically kind of getting out of the mindset of trying to do something quickly and get paid quickly, but having much rather than that, having the long term in mind, where you might not see a get rich type quick thing happen, but in the long term, you build wealth and stability overall. Is that kind of?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
That's awesome.
I feel like when I was working, as a physical therapist, you're just trying to work as many hours as you can and try to make as big of a paycheck as you can. But the big shift for me with this business was that I did not want the amount of hours I was working to be directly correlated to my income. And so, with this business, it's always been about doing things the right way, setting it up appropriately, and setting up the business so it can scale up. And once it scales up, then you're able to, realize some of those larger profits. And I'm at the point now, which it's nothing fantastic, but I've been able to transition careers where I'm managing this business and now involved in commercial real estate, and still do a little bit of physical therapy here and there, but I'm less tied to, that hourly income.
Oh, yeah. And that's what we like here on Freedom in 5 Minutes.
Yeah.
All about scaling, being able to scale and automate and so on, because that is a big change from that kind of small business mindset of I'm going to work this many hours, I'm going to get this many clients, and I'm going to cap myself off, rather than building out systems for your short-term rentals, and then building sales systems and stuff for the commercial real estate that you're into now. But so that you have the time to do that and turn that active income into a semi-passive income, if not totally passive, through business systems. So that's pretty awesome change.
Yeah, it's been good.
So how can people reach you? Because rather than trying to do it on their own and basically fail, because that can happen. I've been in situations where if I did not have somebody who was a mentor, I would have crashed and burned very, very hard in any type of investment type stuff like this. You can really get burned. How can people reach you and actually work with you who are interested in doing short-term rental properties?
Yeah, well, my link for my website with Marcus and Millichap will be on your website.
Perfect.
So they can just access that and then email me, and I'd be happy to help them out.
Awesome. So yeah, that link will be in the show notes. So if you check out the show notes on your iPhone, that link will be on there, and you can go and work directly with Brandon and save yourself a lot of trouble, especially when it comes not just with getting the property itself, but actually building out the system that's required for short-term rental success. And there's not a lot of people out there yet that offer this type of offer the ability to do this. I have a few friends. I have a friend in Memphis that does it for a select few people, but it's something that I think is going to be the wave of the future. So you're like on top of it already, and so I'm excited for anybody who starts working with you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This is super exciting, and I think this is going to be seriously one of the best episodes that we had because it really is. We're only seeing the beginning of these types of short-term rental opportunities, and I believe that within the next decade or two, it's going to be very, very commonplace to, and people are going to be essentially kicking themselves for not moving in this particular direction. So I really appreciate you sharing all the stuff that you know.
Well, I hope that's the direction that it moves in. We'll see.
That's my prediction.
We can hope. Yeah.
All right, Brandon, thank you so much. And guys, if you want to work with Brandon, once again, that link is going to be in the show notes, and it'll also be on the blog post that we do over at freedomin5minutes.com /blog. If you go and check out the actual blog post that we do for this, it'll also be on there as well. So that is the end of this particular episode, but it's not the end of the podcast. So if you want to have more of these, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Just search Freedom in 5 Minutes, Freedom in 5 Minutes, and subscribe there. And go to freedomin5minutes.com if you want a virtual systems architect that will take what you're doing right now in 5 minutes and start scaling your business every day, 5 minutes a day. All right, so we will see you in the next Freedom in 5 Minutes episode.
Thanks for listening to the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast. Now, head over to www.freedomin5minutes.com and register for our free masterclass and discover how to start systemizing and automating your entire business 5 minutes at a time. We'll see you next time on the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast.